come to something that's kind of vocation or industry specific, because there's like a language that you use, right? That you know what it means, and like some of us don't know what you're talking about, right? You know, like that. Like I grew up in a lower income family in urban, and so I'd never been around golf in my life, ever, never. A golf club in our neighborhood was a robbery weapon. That's all it ever was. But and so like being in a golf culture is like interesting to me, and then walking around and listening to the different speakers, which are amazing, is interesting. But it's funny how, because we don't understand the language of another person or group, how much you miss, and how much the is missed in the relationship part of it. And so I came, my career started in the police department. I'll talk about that in a second, and I'm from Washington, D.C. Started in the police department there in that area, and then later on I was invited by the government to consider working in other countries with part of their folks. And so we ended up moving overseas for 26 years to work in conflict zones around the world. And so when you get sent into another culture, when our first assignment, our team was sent to a particular country to work a counter-insurgency movement, and we're not military, we're not with the Defense Department. And so we worked through a university. Anyway, so when you go into this country, we had to learn to speak a different language. And that's, I don't know if you've learned to speak another language, but it's challenging. And so we were living in this city, in this other country, and we'd been there about, I don't know, 4 years maybe, something like that. And so pretty good in the language. And we were living in a terribly horrible neighborhood, because that's just where we had to work in this scenario. And lots of rats and all that kind of cool stuff in your house all the time, that kind of thing. And so my wife, who was my absolute key partner in everything I've ever done career-wise, we've always done it together. She says, you know what we need in this house are screens, because in where we were, they don't have screens, and the mosquitoes are like unbelievable, and there's no screens, and so you just basically get wiped out all the time. And cerebral malaria was a big deal that no one seemed to worry about. And so she says to me, let's get the landlord of the place where we were to put in screens. So I didn't know the word for screen because nobody has them. So it wasn't like I could get a dictionary and look up what's the Malay root dialect for the word screen. And so I thought, well, what you do when you don't know the exact word is you develop the context for the person to go, oh, you mean screens. So it's a lot of language to get to the idea of like screen. The trouble was the culture we lived in, we're not super, as an American, not super popular in this neighborhood that we lived in. And so me and the landlord were already at odds over about 1,400 years of disputing each other. And so that was the issue. So we have the barrier of our different cultures being in conflict. We have the barrier of language, and we have the barrier of the thing I'm going to talk about doesn't exist in their world. So that's a challenge. So I'm already mad before I get there, because I know the landlord's cheap, and I know he's not going to want to do it. And he doesn't really like me either, because I'm, a foreigner in their neighborhood. So with that beautiful setup, I go to him and I say, I'm practicing in my mind what I'm going to say. And I know the word. The word for mosquito is a key word in this conversation, because I have to explain there's a thing that stops mosquitoes from getting into your house. I know if I say that to him, I'll get him in the right range of idea. The problem is the word for mosquito is nyamuk, and the word for monkey is monyet. and I got them confused. The problem is, too, I don't know that I got them confused. I'm pretty sure I'm saying the right word. Did you ever know that when you know you're right and you're completely wrong the whole time? So I go in there, so we're already a little bit at odds with one another, so he welcomes me in. And I sit down and we go through the, how are you, all this, drink some tea, that kind of thing. And then we get to it. And I said, hey, listen, we're having a problem over at our house with monkeys. The thing is, we're in the middle of a city. There hasn't been a monkey in this city, maybe ever. And so he looks at me and he goes, you're having a problem with monkeys? And I go, see, already he's going to pretend like this isn't a real issue, when it is. Because there's mosquitoes everywhere. Like, this is in my brain, and in his brain is, why is this American here talking about monkeys in the city? Like, what does that mean? And so he says, you see monkeys in the city? And I said, yeah, they're everywhere. And he says, like, how many have you seen? And I'm like, do you think I try and count them? And I know this cheapskate is just going to pretend like mosquitoes don't exist. That's what he's going to do. That's his tactic. I'm not going to fall for it. So he says, I've never, ever seen a monkey in this city. I'm like, oh my gosh. You're going to sit here and right to my face tell me you've never seen a monkey in this city. He's like, I never have. He goes, when do you see them? And I was like, mostly at night. They're mostly out at night. And he says, what do they do? And I'm like, you're kidding. You're kidding me. They come into our house and they bite us. And then, don't you hate when people repeat back to you? Okay, he goes, okay, wait. You see countless monkeys, mostly at night, and they come into your house and bite you. Is that correct? The word he kept saying is batul. Is that true? Batul? And I'm like, yes. And I said to him, do you not experience this? He's like, I never have. I'm like, man, I'm just disliking you more and more. And he said, okay, so like your house is up high. How did they get in there? And I'm like, they fly in there. What do you think they do? So he says it again. Okay, wait. You're an American, right? Yeah. Yes. Well-educated? Yes. Do you use drugs, narcotics, or anything like that? Because we've heard about you guys. So you're seeing flying monkeys in your house at night. They come in through the window, flying through the window, and bite you. And my wife, I say. And your wife, right? Both of you. And what do you want me to do about that? And I said, I want you to put up something that keeps them from coming into my house. And he says, wait a second, I don't think you're using the right word. And I realize, oh my gosh, what word am I saying? And then I realize what I'm saying, and I feel like such an idiot. But here's the interesting thing. When you're trying to communicate to another person, and you're using words they don't understand, and they are trying to tell you they don't understand what you're saying, and you keep saying it more and more forcefully like they're stupid, you're going to have a war. So it's so important is to think about, what am I saying to this person? And how are they hearing what I'm saying? Because I know what I mean, but when it gets out there, somehow it's causing a separation between me and that person. So when I'm walking around here, even when I'm talking to another English speaker, I can communicate with them in such a way, and I know they don't know what I mean. So when we say words like success and scalability and all these words, what are we really saying? Like, what are we talking about? And how does it relate to the other human? Because it's another human. We're talking about humans, right? And so that's important. And what that comes down to is in that depth of who that person is, what do those words mean, and how did they learn the definition of those words? Like identity. Like, what's the highest form of me? These words, what do those words even mean? Because I could be saying one thing and you could be hearing another thing. So what I'm going to do with you tonight in this time right here is I'm going to walk you through the way all of our brains work. I'm just going to do it with you together. And the cool thing is, the interesting thing is, everyone in this room is going to be able to do exactly what I'm going to talk about. Because you're human. And that's the key point, that you're human. And so I'm going to walk you from the lowest part of your brain, the most basic part of your brain, all the way up to the front part of your prefrontal cortex, and show you the difference of what happens when you're communicating from up in your prefrontal cortex instead of from your reptilian brain, where most of us are communicating from all the time. All right? So here's how I'm going to do it. So the way humans can do that is through narration, through story. Your brain can only think in symbol and picture ultimately. Really, that's all it has. Everything, as I was talking to the group this morning, everything in your mind is metaphor for something greater than what you could actually say. That's the beauty of you. Even when you go to describe yourself, you are not able to say all of who you are because it can't be said. It can be discovered, but it cannot be explained. That's the depth and the amazement of who you are. And so good training, good mentoring, good leadership is leading the person into a discovery of the depth of who they are, which is a lifelong process that can only be done in community and never done in isolation. Ever, never. Because your brain doesn't function at its highest alone in a basement somewhere. So it functions in community. Your highest level of functioning in the truth of who you are will happen in a community more than it ever will alone. So when I was young, I was raised in a very strict. My mom was very strict independent Baptist. For those of you that know what that is, and so we were not allowed to listen to bad music. Whatever your definition of bad is, bad music, couldn't go to movies, nothing like that. That's how I was raised in the early part of my life. In that world, certain words are bad words. Movie, bad word. And I'm young, and so I'm receiving this information about the world because everything you believe tonight you learned. Everything you believe tonight you learned from somewhere. And most of us don't even know where we learned it from, but we live by it like, I am saying mosquito. No, you're not. You're saying monkey. And we don't know what you're talking about. But I know what I'm talking about. But no, you're saying a word that you learned and it's wrong. So you grow up and you're learning these things and you're learning who you are. You're learning who you are from external sources. You're not sitting by yourself going, I think I know who I am at 7. People are telling you who you are, intentionally, unintentionally, hurtfully, helpfully, all different ways, and you're just receiving it all. And you're developing an identity, a view of yourself from it. My mom says, movies are bad. And if movies are bad and certain music is bad, if you go to a place where movies are being shown, you're going to die there. and God cannot be there. Wow, that's an interesting view. To grow up like, wow, one thing I know about God, not in a movie theater. I know. How do you know? I learned it. And I learned to be afraid of movie theaters. Interesting note, everything that you're afraid of tonight, and if we went around this room and told the truth, which is one thing we're afraid of is truth telling, but if we were telling the truth, we would all admit that a lot of what how we decide things and plan things is based in fear. Self-protection and self-promotion, fear-based thinking. That's all it is. We're raised to make fear-based decisions, self-protection and self-promotion. A person who's not making fear-based decisions, the way you know they're not is they're other-focused. They're not self-focused, they're other-focused. Why? Because I'm not afraid of anyone. But those people are rare. Rare. So I'm growing up, movies are bad, music is bad, certain music is bad. For Christmas, my sister, I don't know if you guys, I'm 62, so my twin sister buys an album. It's not music, it's a comedian. So she thinks it's okay. It's George Carlin. And the title of his album, that album, was 7 Words You Can't Say on TV. Like, that sounds innocent. So my grandmother, the ultimate independent Baptist, and my mom, number 2 independent Baptist, are sitting in the living room with the Christmas tree, and I put on the album. I don't know if you've heard that album, but I couldn't get that album off there fast enough. Once he started into the 7 words, it was so shocking that I just looked at my mom like, I know hell. I'm on my way. I know. Even God's like, wow. We burned that record immediately. So I grew up in that. So at age 14, 8th grade, in 8th grade, I decide I'm going to see if this is true. I'm going to put this to the test experientially, right? And so I decide to sneak into a movie theater. So at 14, I sneak into a movie theater. I don't even know what the movie is. Doesn't matter, I know it's bad. So I sneak into the theater, back row, dark movie theater, down like this. Some of you have been in movie theaters like that. It's a different situation probably, but I'm in the back row, and the movie comes on. I'm already in deep danger, but then I see the movie's R-rated, and now I know, sort of like in Dante's Inferno, and you're going down. I'm already down but then when I see R, like you go down further. It's an R-rated movie. Oh my gosh. It's restricted. It's a restricted movie. It's not just a movie, it's a restricted movie. And it's the movie Serpico. And if any of you know that movie Serpico, it's the true story of Frank Serpico, New York City police officer, played by Al Pacino. And Serpico is the police officer who wants to be a police officer, joins the police department, finds out his whole squad is corrupt, refuses to participate in the corruption, and because of it, he's iced out, and it's his whole journey in the Knapp Commission, and he gets shot by his own squad. It's a stunning, astounding, beautiful movie that won the Academy Award. And I'm watching this movie, 14, and something is happening inside of me that I've never experienced before. Something deep down inside of me is waking up. And I start to cry in the theater at the beauty of that story. Thank you. At the beauty of that story, and the music, and Al Pacino, and the acting, and the whole thing about Frank Serpico and his courage, and all of that is happening, and I just start sobbing. And what's happening in that movie, 8th grade, is the movie is naming me. That's what good literature does, and music, it names you. Every human knows this. It's like something deep inside of you comes alive and goes, yes, yes, yes. Like that. Like if you're watching, how, like I'd be later when you're watching something like Braveheart, I'm sorry, and you're watching Braveheart and, Mel Gibson's up there, freedom, and me and Donna are watching, I'm like, that's me right there. You know how you do this? Like you're watching Gladiator and like, that's really me deep down. I'm Russell Crowe. I'm Maximus. I am deep down. These people around me would get out of the way. I would be Maximus. And I'm telling Donna, and Braveheart's, gonna die he's got his wife's handkerchief in his hand and they're cutting him. And I'm telling Donna, you give me a handkerchief. I'll hold it, even though they slice me open because, and she's like, oh, will you rub my feet? And I'm like, get off. Being Braveheart right now, don't. But that movie's naming me. That movie's calling my name. And I don't know why, and I'm crying. And I know it's not God. It can't be that. What is it? But I don't know what it is because I'm in a bad place. I'm in an evil place, but the most beautiful thing is happening inside of me, and I can't control the emotion and this desire to get up and do something. And so because Independent Baptist was the culture I grew up in an Independent Baptist church, if you don't go forward, it don't count. You can't make a back row decision. God doesn't see anything in the back row. He only sees it if you come forward and the pastor acknowledges it. That's my culture inside my head that I learned. Something's happening inside of me. What do? You stand up and you go forward. So the movie ends. I'm in the back row. People are leaving. I stand up, go forward. But they used to have those little stages in front of the screen. Up on the stage. It's beautiful. It's just like this. And I'm up there like this, crying my eyes out, 8th grade. And the only person I can see is the guy in the projection booth. And he's like, we're not doing altar calls at the R-rated movie. God's not even here. So, and I know deep down inside of me, I've discovered something about who I am. Nobody sat there and said, this is who you are. It was in there. And this revealed it. And I stood up there and I said, I will become Al Pacino as Frank Serpico. And I will become an Italian person who rides a motorcycle and loves opera music and is a police officer, and I will become that. I couldn't do the Italian part. I couldn't do the Al Pacino part. I did learn to love opera music, and I did become a police officer. And when I walked out of that theater that night, I have never walked away from that commitment from that night. Never. And that identity, that the little small form of it that burst in me in that movie, it was my decision maker every day of my life beyond. So in 9th grade, when my friends started getting in trouble, 10th grade, 11th grade, I wouldn't do it. Not because I'm like spiritual or anything, but because I knew at 21 I was going to be on a polygraph in order to become what I knew I was on the inside. And whatever I did in the present tense would affect that day. And so my identity guided me through each day. Not grades, not school, not religion, this. Imagine a 7th and 8th grader today that had that sense of identity. How different it would be in school. And so I go from that day forward into my life, into university, graduated from university, met these incredible people that started to speak more to me about the idea of like, who am I? Whatever I am, the vocation of police allows that identity, movement, and freedom. And so we talk a lot about you don't get your identity from vocation, you bring your identity to vocation. And when you lose that vocation, you take your identity with you. Do you know what happens to people who get their identity from vocation? They perish. They die. They die in here. When police officers in New York City walk out of retirement parties, they shoot themselves in the parking lot because they no longer have an identity. If I don't make those numbers that I'm trying so hard to make, I lose my identity because my identity is in those numbers. Not true. So not true. So I could graduate from university, meet my wife, go to the police academy, come out, start working the street. And my goal in being a police officer is to bring some kind of transformation to the police department, 23 years old. To bring some kind of transformation to the police department. Here's what transformation is not. Reform. It's not reform. It's transform. It's not like I'm trying to make a bad thing not quite so bad. It's I'm trying to make this bad thing into something completely different that's amazing. It's not reform, it's transform. But to transform something, the old has to die so the new can come. How does that work in me, though? How can I bring transformation to something over here when I don't have it going on in me? How can I try and give away something that I myself have never possessed? All I can do is talk about it then. So into the police department, I start experimenting in the police department with what does a transformed police department look like? Guess who could teach me? Nobody. I didn't know anybody that knew anything about this. And so I just started on my own, and I just started practicing. What's another way to think about what's happening right now? That's what I would ask myself. So in our police department, if you got anyone that's been in the military, the police knows this. So when we trained on the range, we were training with Smith & Wesson 6-shot revolvers back in the day. So you're training on the range, you're shooting, and in the range, when you would empty your weapon, you would hold the empty shells until the range instructor told you to drop them in the can because they didn't want to keep cleaning up the shells all over the place. So you'd empty your weapon on an active range. Okay, put the shells in the can. Reload. Fire. Hold the shells. Put the shell. And so what happens when you're in a live shootout on the street? Cops are being killed holding empty shells in their hand. Do you know why? Because that's what you train to do. And so everyone has to go back and retrain, untrain what you learned in order to survive. And so the training that we've gone through in our life is hurting us. And we don't even know really what it is that's hurting us. We can see the effect of it in our country, in the world, but like, why are you holding empty shells in your hand and dying when you could be reloading, you could be redoing, you could be transforming what doesn't work? Here's the reason. We don't know how to do it. So into the police department, I'm working through this. This is all part of how we train people. And so I've been trained in the academy. I have a certain amount of training, get on the street. That training works in some scenarios, and a lot of them, it doesn't work. So when the training doesn't work, what do you do? What do you do? Do you complain? Inky was talking about this morning, the thing doesn't go the way you want, what do? Do you quit? Do you just complain about it? Do you blame other people? So wholeness and resiliency, wholeness, a whole person is organically resilient. Resilient people are not necessarily whole. Resilient people who are not whole are dangerous people. Whole people are organically resilient. Whole means the way of my being, the way I live my life is in line with the truth of who I am. The way of my being matches the truth of my being. And there's no conflict between the two in here. Conflict in here produces conflict out here, always. Always. So my job, so I'm on the police department. I'm trying to create another way of policing. Why not? Nobody else is doing it. My FTO is like, shut your mouth, work your 25, and get out of here. Like, well, he's drinking, he's got a bottle under the seat of the cruiser. Do your 25 and get out of here in the end, like me. Like, I don't want to do that. I want to be what was in the movie theater weeping at that. I want to be that. And I don't even know exactly what that is, but I want to be that. I don't want to do it. I want to be it. Because being informs doing. Being informs doing. Why are you doing that? Because that's who you are. That's what your being is. And so I'm trying this stuff and I'm doing crazy stuff because failure is learning, failure is learning, failure is learning. And I try stuff and it didn't work sometimes and I got suspended sometimes and I go back and try something else and that would work and I get promoted. One night, me and my partner, third year in, are working in this rich neighborhood where all the diplomats live and all the wealthy people live, the most boring neighborhood on the planet. And we're driving around, looking at all these giant houses. And this one house, the garage door is down, but it's not all the way down, and there's a hose coming out of it. We're like, Drive up, break a window, get in the side, a lady in her Mercedes with the windows rolled up, carbon monoxiding herself to death, holding her dog. Break into the car, pull her out, take her into the house, revive her. Her dog's okay. And me and my partner are standing in this house that's bigger and better than anything we've ever seen in our lives. And she's killing herself inside of it. Like, how many people are killing themselves inside of these rich houses? What's her identity? And so I'm talking to her and I'm like, listen, what's going on? I've been through every psychiatrist there is, and my life and my kids hate me and this whole thing like that. And I said, no, I get that. I said, the problem is you're getting your identity from this. You can't get your identity from this. You can't get your identity from another person. Your identity is already in here to be discovered. And so I told her, I said, I can call, we can do the system, or I can call a guy over here to walk you through identity. I got a friend, he'll come over, he'll come now, he'll walk you through identity. You want to do that? And I took my badge off and I laid it on the table. And I said, I'm not talking to you as a police officer. I'm talking to you as who I am. I'm the real me talking to the real you. And the true you is not a depressed old lady. That's not the true you. The true you is down deeper in here, and we want to help the true you, but we can't help the false you. Can't work with the false you. Because the false is just self-protect and self-promote, and it's all about me, and it's all about me, and it's all about me. And she's like, okay. So I put my badge back on. I had gotten suspended before for doing this with a person, so my partner, he called it that thing. He said, are you going to do that thing? So, and he was senior to me, so I would say, when we pulled her out, he looks at me and he goes, you're going to do the thing, aren't you, with her? And I'm like, I am. And then he would leave, and he would drive around the neighborhood so that if we got in trouble, he could say he wasn't there. That was our deal, right? It was just, I don't care. And he would call me on the radio, are you done yet? Are you finished yet? And then when I was finished, he would come get me. If it worked, we both took the promotion or the accolades. If it didn't work, I took the suspension, and he didn't know anything about it. That's called being other-focused. And that's why my partner and I were so close, because he knew that I would share the glory with him, but I wouldn't let him take the fall with me. That's a good partnership. And so he would come back. So he came back, and I'm like, I got a guy coming. Let's get out of here. So we leave. The other guy comes. My friend comes. He's a professional therapist guy. He comes. He goes in. We leave. We're on the midnight shift. Next day, come into roll call. Next night, come into roll call. And the duty captains in our roll call meeting are like, He doesn't usually come to the midnight roll call meeting unless somebody's in trouble. My partner's like, I wasn't with you. I was not with you. And I was like, oh, shoot. Every time I do something like this with a person, I potentially lose my career. Do you understand that? But do you know why it's okay to lose my career? Because I don't get my identity from it. And I'm not afraid to lose it. Yeah. So the duty captain comes in. He's sitting in roll call. Everyone's in there. Everyone knows somebody's in trouble. My partner's sitting on the other side of the room from me. I'm with you, brother, from way over here. We don't leave anybody behind. Yeah, right. And so the captain says, you're all familiar with General Order 402.3? We're all like, yes, sir. And he goes, this general order prohibits you from calling an outside source into a problem, no matter what the problem. He's reading through it. Everyone on our squad knows I'm the only one that violates General Order 405. And so they're all just looking at me. They're like this, because we're brothers. And like, yeah, we all know that order. And the captain says, well, the chief got a letter this morning from a citizen and passed the letter down to me, and I'm going to read it in roll call to you. And so this is the letter. Dear Chief of Police, early this morning I came home from a business trip, and when I came into my house, I find in my house my wife with this person, this professional therapist dude, and I find out that my wife has attempted suicide, and this person is in my house, and I don't like these kind of people. I don't like this situation. I'm offended by this situation. And then I find out when I ask him why he's here that your police officers brought him here. And I do not appreciate this. And then the captain just looks at me like, I'll pack my things. But then but the letter continues, but my wife has been to every therapist I know. We've spent so much money on her depression. I have never seen her transformed like this. Never, ever seen anything like this. He goes, I am so thankful that you as the chief of police have taught your officers how to go outside the rules occasionally when they have the discretion to do it. My partner moves over. He goes, I didn't know street officers had this kind of creativity in their working life. Thank you very much. The general editor of National Geographic magazine. And then on the bottom of the letter was a little postum note from the chief himself. I'm like, wow, he wrote me a postum note. And it said, this worked this time. If it doesn't work, you're fired. Then the chief's letter back to the guy. Dear citizen, as chief of police, I make every effort to help my officers be not afraid to fail and creative in every situation possible. Thank you for your support in the community. And if he ever does that again and it doesn't work, what would stop me from doing that? Fear. Of what? Self-protection and self-promotion. It's more important that I protect my job than the welfare of this other person. It's not worth it to me. Unless I don't get my identity from that. So I do that stuff for 5 years like that. I make Officer of the Year. I get to make detective. We did these amazing, me and my partner, did these cases. And then I became a training officer. And then in my 5th year, this is really what I want to say to you before I'm done. In my 5th year, I get a phone call from a magistrate, a judge, in the middle, 10 o'clock at night. And he says, Winship, yes, sir. He said, I want you to come meet with me tonight in a bar. There's a bar down in D.C. I want you to meet me at this bar now, tonight. Be there. And I'm like, okay, that was weird, but he's who he is, and you don't say no to him, so I go to meet him. And I go into this bar, and he's sitting at a table with another guy, and the other guy has a folder in front of him. And they're sitting like one's here and one's here, and I'm like, oh, this is like a traditional interview because they're sitting on apart, so I can't look at both of them at the same time. Like, they're going to interview me about something, and I'm super uncomfortable. Like, why are we doing this in a bar in DC? Why is this happening at night? And the guy with the folder opens it up, and it's all my cases for 5 years. And he's reading through them. And he goes, how do you know how to do this stuff? How are you figuring this out? He goes, I know the police academy didn't teach you this. Where did you learn how to do what you're doing? What is your mental process? Can you articulate this to me? I was 28 years old. He was an operations guy for the CIA. He's like, how are you doing this? And he would pull out cases and go, explain that to me. How in the world did you come up with the decision and the idea to do what you did? And then why did you do it? Tell me. And he said, I know it works. I'm looking at the results of what you do. I want to know how you know how to do this stuff. Who's telling you how to do this? And I said, well, and he said, like this. And he would just pull cases out and he would say, how did you get this gang to stop participating in the narcotics in this housing? How did you get them to stop it? You didn't arrest anybody. I said, well, let me back off on this a bit revisionist, but let me tell you something about when you hit a barrier, any barrier in life, when you hit a barrier, you can keep doing this. You'll lose. Keep doing this, or you can back away from the barrier and innovate and go at the barrier in a new way. All innovation is, I don't care what discipline, physics, any discipline you're talking about, all innovation is preceded by contemplation. So if you're going to train in something, you can't train in how to innovate. You can, but you'll get faster, cheaper ideas, but you won't get transformation. You'll just get a way to make more money off this old idea. But contemplation allows you to let the old go and replace it with something new. That's innovation. You don't trash the old, you build off of it, but in a new way, in a way like, hey, we haven't thought of that before. It has to be preceded by contemplation. So if you want successful students in the public school, don't teach them how to innovate, teach them how to contemplate. But the teachers don't know how to do it. And so then what you end up studying is, well, what did that guy do? Or what did that guy do? That's not contemplation, that's not innovation, that's imitation. Every one of you in here is a creator. That's what humans do, they create. And when we're in our true identity, creation comes out of us organically. When we're in the false, we're imitators. We're just imitators. And we move in fear. We're afraid to fail because we don't know who we are. And we're getting our identity on whether this works or not. You won't really try anything ever if that's what you're doing. So he says, like, how did you do this in this neighborhood? And I said, well, one night I was down there. I got called into this neighborhood. And in the neighborhood, the call comes over my radio like this. There's a man, the dispatcher, my scout number was 510. 510, they call you. Scout 510, 510. There's a man standing in the middle of the Beacon Tree apartment complex in the yard there, in the courtyard there, screaming at the top of his lungs that he's Superman. Go investigate. So I like saying that back to the dispatcher. Let me just say that back to you. There's a guy standing in the middle of Beacon Tree Park that's yelling that he's Superman. 10-4. 10-4. So I get on the scene, walk into this by myself in this low-income project. And sure enough, there's a guy standing in the middle of the, I am Superman. I'm like, I don't remember this in the academy at all, not this one. And when I moved towards him, I can smell the PCP, the green, we called it green, the PCP. PCP in my day, when you smelled PCP on a person, it was probable cause to use lethal force. Because you cannot subdue a person on PCP. Lots of officers get killed wrestling with PCP people who you can't hurt. And so, my training, I draw my weapon. I aim for center mass to stop aggressive action, ready to just do what I'm going to do to protect this neighborhood, to protect myself. And I'm ready to do that. I don't want to do that, but I can't think of another thing to do. So, in that moment, and this is when this is what's happening in your brain. This is what I want you to think about. So I see that scenario. In that scenario, my brain is in gear, and all thoughts in your brain start in the lower right part of your brain, the lower right part of your brain. And that part of your brain, that's the most primal part of the human, is called the attachment center. And what the human brain at its most primal level longs for is joyful attachment. It craves it. Joyful attachment to others. That's why when a baby's born, the very first thing it wants is that eye contact with the other. Joyful attachment to the other. And every human that goes into any situation at the deepest part of who they are, they long for joyful attachment. That's the very first place it starts. And so here I am with this guy, the thought's down here, and these thoughts move every 1/6 of a second. It's very rapid. You don't even have time to process them. That's why training is so good or so dangerous. And so I'm ready to shoot, and it's going up and into your assessment center, the amygdala. So it moves. It's like an elevator, the thought going up into your brain. It moves from, wow, I'd love to be joyfully attached to Superman, but up into the assessment center. The assessment center is the library of past experience. And the library of past experiences, it goes like, have we ever seen this situation before we attach? Have we ever seen this situation before? And the assessment center, the amygdala, works on, is this good, bad, or scary? And it mostly operates on fight or flight. And the assessment center has been gathering information since you were a little kid. And once it's made a decision that a scenario is bad, it never, ever changes its mind. It will never change. Once that produces negative emotion in you, you'll be 50, your brain will see a similar situation as when you were 5, and you'll go right back to shut down right now. So I feel like I should go for that promotion, but I'm afraid to fail. When did you learn that you were a failure? 8 years old. And I can't get out of it. I can talk myself, but I'm going to fail. So that's the assessment center. So my thought is like, I'd like to be attached. My brain's like, we'd like to attach to Superman. And my assessment center is shoot him. Shoot him. Protect. Self-protect. Shoot him. And so I'm aiming, and then the assessment center isn't the decision maker, it's just the one that's going to do it. If you don't do anything, it'll react to it. But then the singular cortex is above the assessment center, and the singular cortex will say, is any part of this a good idea? It'll override the assessment center if you train it to do it. Otherwise, you'll just keep living in the fear all the time. The anxiety will just drive you nuts. I get my identity from my sales numbers. Do you? That's the assessment center. And we're not going to make it. We got to get it. We're going to die. That's the assessment center. But the singular cortex is like, is that true? And we could grab it and go, I don't know. Let's keep going up and see if it's true. But most of us won't. We'll let it go back down to the assessment center. It's too scary. I can't do it. So in the singular cortex, it's like, is there another way? Before I do this, is there another way? And this woman comes running out, and she gets between me and him. And she gets on her knees in front of me, and she starts praying in front of me that I will not shoot her husband. It's like, here's another factor to consider. She's actually praying in front of me, asking God to intervene in this situation. I want to attach to her. I like her. I'm not afraid of her. This is new information in this scenario. But the assessment center says, you can't let this guy go. What if he kills her after you leave? And the assessment center is trying to take back control. Fear, self-protect. What about the future? Future tripping. What about the future? Forget the present tense. What about the future? What about the past? Fear, 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 fear. But her, what do you want to do? I can get him inside. Let me take him inside. Can you keep him inside? Yes. How do you know he's not going to hurt you? I know how to talk to him. You know how to talk to Superman right there? That guy? Yes, I do. Don't shoot him. Let me have him. Then the thought can go all the way up to the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is that beautiful creative part of the true you that can imagine whole new innovative scenarios. What if letting him go is the best idea for you and her and him? What if that's the best idea? Don't be afraid of it. What if it's right? What if you stop using your imagination to predict doom and use your imagination for what it's really for, to see the unseen true? Let him go. Let her have. All right. All right. She gets him in. I leave. I'm like, wow. Sweating bullets all through the shift. Any more calls down to Superman during the night? No. All quiet. Get off work. All quiet. All good. 1 month later, day work, I get a call. 510, Scott 510. We've got a escaped mental patient on the basketball court in the courtyard of the same apartment complex across the street, which is another gang, different gang. One gang on this side, another gang on this side. Go get the escaped mental patient and bring him back to the hospital. Let's go down there, park my car on the side with this other gang who I don't get along with very well, with their leader. Go up the hill into the basketball court's got this big high fence, one entrance, open it up. Go in. The guy standing there, he looks at me and he goes, I'm not going back. I'm like, what's with courtyards down in this neighborhood? Like, what's happening? I'm not going back. You can't make me go back. I'm like, you're not under arrest. Just walk with me down to my car, get in my car, and let's get out of here because this is a bad side of this neighborhood. I'm not going with you. And I'm like, okay, if you don't go, I'm going to have to make you come with me. I don't want to fight you. Come on, let's go down. And he goes up and he puts his fingers through the links. No! I'm like, none of these scenarios are in the academy. None of them. And so I go up behind him and I'm like, hook my arm around his waist. I'm like, come on, let's go. And he's strong. He's not going anywhere. And so I'm pulling on him. And then I look over here and up the hill through the fence comes the gang from this side, who are not friendly. We're not on friendly terms. And they come in and they get around. I'm holding on to this guy. He's holding on to the fence. And they get in the semicircle around me, blocking me in. And I say to the guy, if you don't let go of this, we got to get out of here right now. I got to get out of this situation right now. I can't be wrestling with you with these guys behind me to my back. And so I can't let him go, though. So I said, I'm going to pull on you. You let go. And so I pull on him, and he just opened his hands, and both of us go flying backwards. It's like nothing in a movie. In the movies, you're like, I'd be so good at that. But and he lets go, and he's heavy, and he lands on top of me on my back. And when we hit the pavement, I don't know how, it's a miracle, my holster pops open from the way, and my gun slides across the pavement. Have you ever seen that in a James Bond movie? I was going to learn to shoot all of them with one bullet, but there goes my gun. There it goes. Wow. And I'm thinking, how is that possible? And I'm holding the guy. I can't let him go, and my gun's over there. And this guy goes and picks it up. And he walks over and he stands over top of me holding my gun. And I'm like, I'm going to die. This guy's going to shoot me and say, this guy did it. And I'm like, wow, I would love a creative idea right now. I would love one. And my assessment center is going, we don't even know how to assess this one. This is just over. It's done. And I'm thinking about our little sons and all that stuff. And I'm like, I would love a great idea right now. Because if you just panic, you're lost. And so I'm just like, hey, slow this thing down. Stay in the present tense. And then I hear the gate open, opens up. And I look over like this, and it's Superman and his gang from the other side of the street. And they come on the court, and they push those guys out of the way, and they get around me in a smaller circle. And I'm looking up at Superman. And I was like, he didn't say one word. He's just looking at me, and I said, I need my gun. And he goes, and my gun comes sliding back across the pavement, put it in my holster, and I said, I need to get this guy to my car without anybody getting hurt. He doesn't say a word. He just stands there. And so I stand the guy up, and I just take a step like this, and Superman and his gang take a step with me, around me in a circle. And the other gang is outside of them. So like a little square dance, we just go across the parking lot like this. No one's talking. We're all just moving together as one down the hill to my car. The gang opens up. I put the guy in the back seat. I get in the front seat. I roll down my window and I say to Superman, thank you. You saved my life. And he looks at me and he goes, I am Superman. That guy, Hector is his name, and his wife, Maria, who came and prayed in front of me, I would go eat dinner at their house while I was on duty. Do you want to know how to shut down crime in a city, in a neighborhood? That's how you, and I told that story to the operations guy. And he goes, yeah, I don't like that process. He said, but then he said this, but it works. You know how people know who you really are? By the result of your life. Not by your mouth talking bad, by the result. How they know you. Saves time, just live it. Then you don't have to talk so much about it. And so he was flipping through cases, and then he was saying, how did you do this? How did you do this? How did you do this? And all of it was by not being afraid and using the truth of who I am to engage into the truth of who the other person is, who they really are, not what their ethnicity is, their gang membership, none of that. None of that matters. That's not an identity. Identity is here. It's deeper than all of that. What are we fighting about? All this other stuff. How we identify ourselves. We're not saying our identities, we're saying the names of gangs that we participate in is all. I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, gang names. And I'm a Blood, and I'm a Crip, and I'm a progressive, and I'm a conservative. And I got a vaccine, and I didn't. Oh my gosh. Like, this is it. This is how we're identifying ourselves. You know what this kind of identity produces? War. It's all it, look at our country. Conflict. We can't even have a conversation because as soon as I identify myself, it creates separation in the room. When you say your true identity, it should draw that room together. But we don't know what that is. So the CIA guy, he listens to me for a long time, and then he says, let me give you a real scenario in real life. He goes, here's what we're looking for. We have a problem we're working on in the world right now. And in the problem that we're working on, we just lost our best agent in that problem. And it was a female agent, and we don't know where she is, and we don't know what's happened to her. We don't know if she switched teams, is dead. We don't know where she's gone. But we've got this scenario, and we can't solve it. We don't know how to think about it. What would you do? And so what I have to do is sit back and let that thought start. I would love to attach to this guy. What if I say a stupid answer? What if I fail? What if I don't know what to say? The assessment center's running the scenarios to protect me. It's basically saying, don't answer. You're gonna look like an idiot. You're 28 years old. This guy's a career operations guy. You're gonna sound like an idiot. He already thinks the fact that Superman saved you is weird. Don't talk. Don't just, but then it goes up and it's like,
Yeah, but what if this is an opportunity of a lifetime? Like, what if I blow it? So what? So let it go all the way up here, and in the truth of you, who you are. And who I am is that 8th grader sitting in the movie theater going, that is me. And now I'm at the next level of that. Right? I made police officer, but it doesn't stop there, because this is a metaphor. Police officer's just the symbol of where we're going in the true identity. And it's far beyond what you could ever even imagine, because you just can't yet. But now it's past police, and now it's CIA sitting there going, what would you do? Just tell them, guess, do it, speak. And I said, okay, here's what I would do. And I told him what I would do. He listens to me and he takes a napkin and he writes down a number figure. And he goes, you're hired. Will this get you to work for us? And I mean, it took me a long time to count that number. It's like, I haven't seen a number that big. That's a big number. And he said, and you will never have to worry about your kids' tuition. You will never have to worry about any of that ever again. Are you willing to take this challenge? Because what you just said you would do is something we have never thought of. And so I said, what did Inky say? Say yes. You say yes. Don't think about, wow, what if I can't do it? Don't say yes. And I just looked at him and I said, yep, I take it. And I go home and I wake up my wife, who's 8 months pregnant. I guess if you're 9 months, you'd have the baby. She's 8 months pregnant. She's 8 months pregnant. And I wake her up and I go, hey, Donna, guess what? She's like, what? We're moving to the Islamic world. My wife is Jewish, by the way. Just to add to the horror of this statement in the middle of the night when you're 8 months pregnant. We're moving to the Islamic world to infiltrate, this is my job description, to infiltrate militant organizations and pacify them. I said yes. I start training this week. She starts crying. And I'm like, it's probably just the hormones. She'll be okay tomorrow. She wasn't okay tomorrow. So because of that night, now there's a lot more to that story, and the way I navigated it with those guys is I didn't just take a job. It was because we created a whole nother paradigm of counterterrorism. But that night, so that was like a Wednesday night. Now here's the thing, here's the truth about life. Life, there's no certainty in life, right? There's no certainty. Why do we act like we're trying to make it certain? It's never certain. It's a lie, it's a deception to think there's certainty in any of this. It's a mystery. But we love mystery. Humans love mystery. We want to make everything a formula where we can control it, and then we're bored out of our minds because we hate it. Life is a mystery. We were made for mystery. It's like when you're watching a Netflix series or something and it ends, like whatever one you're into, and it ends and you're just, the next day, you're kind of like, don't know what to do. And you talk about the people like they're real. Like, did you see what happened last night? Yeah. It's over now. I know. Do you think they're going to have another season? God, I hope so. I hope so. Like, do you not have a life or any kind of identity? Is your identity coming from that? But it's because we love that, like there's another chapter, like we love it. But that's your life. It's supposed to be that way. It's like you discover a piece of yourself and then love, God, whatever, the universe bumps it up another level. Like, wow, well done in the police department. Let's go to the next level on Wednesday night. Good job in the neighborhood of diplomats. Let's move to their country and do something. And it's like, okay. What would stop me? Fear, self-protection, self-promotion. Kill it. Kills all creativity. And it's mostly how we think about stuff. Go overseas, spend many years overseas. So I'm going to wrap up here with this idea. So the whole time, even while I'm telling you this stuff, your brain is doing this thing. We can't stop it. Every sixth of a second, your brain is pulling up ideas you want to attach to, like, I would love to live like that. And then that assessment center is saying, what are you, an idiot? This isn't real. We've got tomorrow, and tomorrow, we got to do this, blah, blah, blah. And the assessment center keeps shutting it down. And the singular cortex is like, pass an idea on to me, and let's take it to the next level, up to the prefrontal cortex, and let's become creators and innovators. And do what? We don't know. That's what creators and innovators do. We think of the next thing as we're moving towards it. Do you know how many federal task force have worked in the history of the United States? None. I'll help you. None. So when they don't work, you know what we do the next year? We do them again with more money. Why do we keep doing that? Because we don't know what else to do. We can't think of a way to transform education. But the thing is, we could. We're able to. We're afraid to. We're afraid of it. We just hit an asteroid with a satellite. Do you know how much we thought of how to do that? But we can't figure out how to transform education in the United States of America and make it a place where kids love to be and teachers love to be. Do you know why we sacrificed learning for teaching kids how to get high-paying jobs? That's why. And when we gave up learning to just teach them how to figure out job placement, we killed their creativity. And we said, your identity comes from your ability to produce in the marketplace. That's what we tell them every day. Do you know how because that's what we're doing too. The only value you have is what the marketplace says you have. And the marketplace is not alive. Wow. No, little 8th grader. Your identity is deep within you, waiting to be released and explored the rest of your life in community with others. And we're here to help you discover it, not tell you what it is, help you discover it. And that's what every leader ought to be doing with their people. And if you do that with them, they will outperform anything you could ever come up with. So we go overseas. I'm going to end it. Go overseas, and in one of many years over there, crazy stuff, and I'm doing the same thing that I did on the police department, just more risk involved. A lot of failure, a lot of people it was tough. This is a tough crowd to please. Anyway, so over there, so in one year there, kind of towards the end of our time there, my team was tasked with locating this particular individual and taking that person to infiltrate this militant organization, to infiltrate it and pacify them. We never used force. We were experimental. We never used force. We never used money. We didn't coerce in any way. We didn't have to. We knew that if that person understood the truth of who they are, they wouldn't participate in the violence. Peace here, conflict here, conflict here. And I'm just talking, when we're working with people, my whole goal is let me just help you get rid of the conflict that's driving you here. Once we get rid of that, then the real you can move. But we don't know how to do that. Anyway, and so you got to locate this guy, your job, should you choose to accept it, although they never said that part. They're just like, your job, unless they kill you, is this. Get this guy out of commission. We don't know how to tell you what to do because we don't know what to do. Your job is to locate this person and make it so they no longer participate in the activities that they've been running for a long time. And several countries are interested in them and stopping, okay? Here's what our team does. We have a great team. We get men and women. We get together as a team of, 8 then, men and women. And we get together. And the very first thing we do together is make sure everyone understands the truth of who they are. Are you working in your true identity right now? They've been trained in this. They know what I mean. Are you working in your true identity right now? That means fear is no part of what we're going to do right now. Do you know who you are right now? Are you operating in that right now? If they're not, we stop everything we're doing because we so value this person, and our team isn't the same without this person, and we love them at such a deep level, we will not move unless they're okay. Do you know when a person knows that that's the way you think about them on a team, do you know what they will do for that team? Anything. Are you okay? Are you insured? Anybody dealing with negative emotion at the moment? No. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to move into contemplation, and in the contemplation, our goal of contemplation is to come up with an innovative way to locate this guy, get him to move to us in such a way that we can take him out of commission by his own will. We don't have a plan yet, but we will when all these identities put their minds together. We need all of them, looking at the problem from the distinctive way that each identity does, like a human body working together. And we'll start working, contemplating together, intuitive mind, and let's start saying what we think of a way to work this out. And we just whiteboard it. Each identity contributes in its own way. And then they just start talking, and we start writing what they each think, and then that very beautiful plan starts to take shape. And you know who gets the credit for it? Everybody. Not some celebrity, not some famous person, everybody. All of us. Celebrity worship is in a fear-based culture. That's all it is. Imitate that, because we're never going to come up with anything. So we teach that. Be like them. Whole team, then we come up with this plan. We put the plan in action. The plan is we're going to set up a course, a class, because the guy that we're after is a real scholar. And so we're going to set up a course. We're going to offer a course in a foreign country, in the Middle East. We're going to offer this like one-time course. I'm going to teach it. And we think that he will come to participate in this subject matter because he wants to know it really bad. That's our plan. So we set up the class. We work with the government whose country we're in. We set up the class. I have the credentials to teach the topic, which took a lot of work, but to get those, I had them. And so sure enough, go in the first night, and he walks in the room with his number 2 guy. So not just him, the top 2 of this organization come in. Boom, there he is right there. Right there. Teach the class. My whole goal is to form an attachment with him. Because what he wants deep down, because he's a human being, is joyful attachment. That's what he wants. But he doesn't think it's possible anymore. So it's all war now. But it is possible, and I'm going to show him that it's possible again. So there he is. I want to attach to him. He wants joyful attachment way down somewhere in his brain, but he doesn't know it. He thinks he hates my guts because he hates Americans. And so I'm teaching the class, and boy, I can see his fists up, and he makes comments in the class about U.S. foreign policy, all this stuff, trying to agitate the class. He's a super smart guy, but he's a mean guy. And his number 2 guy just sits there like this. And his number 2 guy has a big phosphorus burn across his face from a U.S. bomb that killed his family, sitting right there in front of me. And he's looking at me like, you did this to my family. Can you overcome that kind of hostility? Can humans ever? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. How long does it take? Not long. And so we're teaching the class, and we do it for a few nights, and then one night, and we're just building the rapport, and one night I come out of the class late. I come out of the building late, and the car pulls up. I'm on the street of this city, and the car pulls up. I'm waiting for a taxi, and it's him, the guy with the phosphorus burn driving, and 2 guys in the back seat, and he rolls down the window, and he looks at me, and he goes, "Where are you going?" And I said, home. And he says, "Get in the car, we'll give you a ride." Now, let me tell you something about getting in a car with people like this. You don't do that. You do not do that. Like, all of your training is, if the bad guys invite you to sit in their car, don't do it. And so I didn't have to think about that answer. He's like, "Get in the car, we'll give you a ride." I'm like, and no. Didn't even think about it. My assessment center is, and no. Because the year before, the senior part of our team were all killed in a car in Mosul. And so my assessment center is like, I don't have to go back very far to know this is a bad idea. Don't get in that car. And I said, no, thanks. I'll just wait for a taxi. And he goes, well, no. I insist. Get in the car. Now, my amygdala is going, it's up to run now. It's not even don't get in the car. It's like flee, run, wait for another day. Dumb idea. Except my singular cortex is like, unless this will be the greatest thing you've ever done in your career. Fear, love. Fear, love. He's a human being. Get in the car with him. Back and forth. Self-protect, other focus. Self-protect, other focus. And who can decide? My true identity can decide. And so I take him and I tell him, hold on a second. And whatever you call this, whatever your words for of this, I just asked. What is the right thing to do here? Put the fear down. Shh. The only thing that can make me afraid is me. The only one that can make you afraid of anything is you. No one has the power to make you afraid. You make yourself afraid, and you learn to be afraid. You can unlearn that, just like you can learn to reload your weapon in a whole different way. And here's what I ask myself. What am I afraid of? Truth tell, mind change, form change. This is our training. Truth tell, mind change, form change. The form I'm going to take right now when he says get in the car, my form is no, I'm leaving. No, we need to transform that idea right now. How? Truth tell, mind change, form change. Not just form change, truth tell, mind change, form change. We train in it all the time. Truth tell, I don't want to get in the car because I'm afraid. What am I afraid of? I'm afraid these guys are going to kill me. That's what I'm afraid of. That's truth tell. Am I going to die? Am I going to die? Is this a decision that will get me killed because I'm afraid to die in this situation and I'm afraid of failure, which is really what it is, that I'm going to fail the mission and the whole thing. That's what I'm afraid of. I want to be on a team that tells the truth. We're going to think about this, but we're scared. Truth tell, mind change, prefrontal cortex. I'm afraid I'm going to die. You're not going to die. You're not going to die. These guys don't have that kind of power over you. They don't have that kind of say. That's not true. You're not going to die. Now that makes me, so unless you change your mind, you will never change the form of what you do. And unless you tell the truth, you'll never change your mind because you'll never know the new idea unless you say the old one and let it go. Get in the car. Get in. All right, I'll get in. I'll go with you. Now, what I don't want to do is sit in the back seat between those two thugs. But I don't know how to not sit in the back seat, so the options run through my mind. Can I drive? I could suggest I could drive. I'm pretty sure they wouldn't let me do that. If I yell shotgun, that's probably the worst thing I could say. So how do I avoid getting in the back seat? See, when you're thinking in the prefrontal cortex, you stay in the present tense, and you're able to stay open and flexible and shift paradigms pretty quick. But you can only do that in the prefrontal cortex. Once you're in the assessment center, the amygdala, you're just going to react in fear and anger. And it'll get you killed. You're going to lose. And so I have to stay forward, and I have to train to do it. Present tense, present tense. I'm not dead yet. I'm making a decision. Where am I going to sit? And they go, get in the back seat, shoot. The guy gets out. I get in between them, get in the car, boom, start driving. Where do you live? I don't want to tell them because Donna's there. I live up that way. They make a U-turn and go the other way. Reassess. We're not going to my house. We're going the wrong way. Stay in the present tense. Stay in the present tense. Don't get 2 minutes ahead of what's happening because you don't know what's going to happen in 2 minutes, and don't predict. Stay in the present, open-minded, shifting paradigms, emergent meaning is coming. Adjust to it. All trained how to do it. Stay there. Stay here. Stay in the present. You're alive. You're in between two guys. The car is small. They made a mistake. They're sitting too close together. It's a tactical mistake on their part. You know how to get out of this car. You know how to get out. They're too close together. You can move before they'll ever react. And they're big guys and they're trapped and you're not. All careful thinking. But if you disable them, which you could, and then you get out of the car, what have you accomplished? Nothing. In fact, I know they know where my wife is. So if I get out of the car, I'm just making the situation worse. It'd be cool in a movie, but in real life, it's not cool. And so stay in the car, stay. And they drive down into the bad part of the city where the militants gather, darn. And then worse, they go out into the desert. And I'm like, oh no, I'm pretty sure they're not taking me like to a dance and a buffet in the desert, I'm sure. We're going out into the desert, and when they take people out into the desert, no, stay in the present tense. Don't say what they do out in the desert. Stay in the car. Stay in the present tense. Meanings are changing. Things are shifting. Stay present. Stay present. Drive out into the desert. He turns around. The lead guy turns around, and he looks at me, and he goes, you know what we're going to do? No. We know who you are. Like, you think we don't know who you are? We know who you are, and we know what you're doing. And we're going to take you out here and we're going to put you on trial and we're going to execute you. Then he says, what do you think of that? Then I thought, do you really want to know what I think about that? And then I asked myself, what do I think about that? Present tense, stay in the prefrontal cortex. What do I think about that? And what is the right thing to say back right now? Because I know what he wants. He wants me to freak out. He wants me either to fight them or to cower. And either way, he'll win. It's like a jujitsu fight. Don't go too hard. Don't come back. Use their momentum. Think. What's the right thing to say? I have two ideas of what to say. Number one, tell him you're not afraid. Number two, tell him you want to be his friend. Those are the two ideas that come to my mind. Here's my problem with both ideas. They're lies. I am afraid, and I do not want to be his friend. Say the ideas. Why? Because isn't that the goal? Isn't the goal to not be afraid and to be his friend? Isn't that the goal? Then say the goal. Speak the goal. Let the goal be spoken into existence. Say it to him. He's my enemy. Is he? Is he? That's not his identity, enemy. That's not an identity. You don't know who he is. Say it. My answer to this question is, I am not afraid, and I want to be your friend. Not very convincing, but it's out there. I mean, as soon as I said it, it's like something shifted in that car. So interesting. And he looks at me and he smiles and he goes, you're not afraid. And then, like, you know what? I'm actually not. But I didn't know it until I said it. I spoke it. I'm actually not. I'm actually more courageous now that I said it. He goes, you want to be my friend? I'm like, maybe. The whole thing shifted. And he goes, okay, all right. You're not afraid? You want to be my friend? Turn the car around. We're taking you back to your house. You are? Yeah, because here's what we're going to do so you can prove that you're not afraid and want to be my friend. We're going to take you back to your house and we're going to drop you off. And tomorrow night, we're going to send a driver in a car to your house. And you get your wife. They knew where she was. You get your wife and you get in that car and go with that driver and trust that we're not going to kill both of you together. You want to be my friend? You're not afraid. Bring your wife. I'm like, all right. So they take me home. Go in. Donna's like, wow, you're late. Yeah, they had a meeting. With who? I said, well, we got a dinner invitation for tomorrow night. And I I think it's going to be probably really interesting. And she said, what is it? And I told her. Because now she has to decide in her own identity what she wants to do and what she will do. And it's up to her. I'm not going to make her, obviously. And so she goes through this. We have 3 sons. We have grandkids. We have all of that. And so she has to now go through that whole process in her own identity, in her own mind. And so she thinks a lot about it. And she says, I think we should go together. Let's go. So the next night, car comes. We get in the car, holding hands. Don't know who this guy is driving. He drives straight up into the mountains. And Dawn and I didn't talk. We just held hands. It's like, here we go. Here we go. We're going to go together, though. Because she doesn't get her identity from me. And I don't get my identity from her. But together, we form a third identity that's more powerful than both of these identities. And nothing can separate that. It's like having 2 atoms joined together at the electrons. It's easy to separate it. But when 2 atoms are joined together at the nucleus, it's inseparable. Because they're joined at the center of who they are. Up into the mountains. Drives up into this villa. We get out, we walk in there. And in the villa is not the one guy we were looking for. It's his entire leadership team and their wives all in one location. And we go in, and Donna goes in with the women, and they go off that way, and I go in with the men, and we go up this way. And through the night, I walked those men out of their false identity into the truth of who they are all night long. And I know Donna's doing the exact same thing with their wives. And sometime I can tell you how we did that, but it's a skill you learn and you practice and you fail and you do it again. And as the sun's coming up, and I have this picture in my office, as the sun's coming up, the main guy, he gets up and he walks over to the fire, and there's a lamb on the fire, and he cuts off the leg of the lamb and he puts it on a plate, and I'm sitting in a chair, and he comes down and he kneels in front of me and he serves me the food, and I take it and I say thank you. And he said, I am so glad that you were not afraid of me and that you wanted to be my friend. And that night they decided to withdraw from all hostilities in the region. That's what we can do. That's what you can do. Any of us can do this. Here, know who you are. Discover the depth of who you are and who the other is, and form meaningful relationship. And then nothing in your life is a problem to be solved, but simply a challenge to use your creativity and identity to figure out how to innovate. Thank you very much.